Hello everyone. By now, all of you must have gone through the questions from the Indian economy asked in GS paper 3 UPSC mains 2023. The basic purpose of this particular discussion is to understand as to what was the demand of the question and how the questions could have been answered by going through our sources, which include our mains revision classes, the mains compass, the mains test series, as well as daily news simplified videos. Soon, we'll be coming out with a detailed discussion of each of these questions. But this discussion is to understand the demand and how the questions could have been answered. So, as you can see, in this year mains, we had 8 questions from the Indian economy, out of which 4 were 10 marker and 4 were 15 marker. And as you can see, out of almost around 8 questions asked in this year mains, you could have easily answered 5 to 6 questions after going through our sources. This is what we are going to discuss one by one. Let's start with the first question now. The first question is, state the objectives and measures of land reforms in India. Discuss how land ceiling policy on land holding can be considered as an effective reform under the economic criteria. This was question number 11 and it was a 15 marker question. So when you read the question has three important parts. The first part of the question is with respect to objectives of the land reforms. The second part of the question is with respect to measures, that is, what were the components of land reforms. The third dimension was with respect to the economic benefits of land ceiling policy. So there are three parts of the question. So with respect to the land reforms policy of the government, I hope everyone must be knowing that during the British time, the British had introduced the three land revenue settlement system, which included the Zamindari system, Roytwari system, and Mahalwari system. And these land revenue settlement system had proved to be exploitative, and it led to concentration of land in the hands of only few people. So immediately after India's independence, we came out with the constitution which provided for Article 39B and Article 39C in order to prevent the concentration of wealth and to provide for equitable distribution of wealth. So, the basic objective of land reforms was to promote equity and to ensure egalitarian society. So, that is the first part, that is the objective. The second part, that is the measures of land reforms. The land reforms components were three. The first one was with respect to abolition of intermediaries. The second part was with respect to facilitating the tenancy reforms. And the third reform was with respect to consolidation of agriculture, which also included ceiling on the land holdings. So, this is the second part of the question. The third part of the question is how ceiling on the land led to economic benefits. We all know that the land is a state subject. So different state government passed the Land Ceiling Act in order to put a limit on the land ownership. So here you are required to discuss the important benefits of the land ceiling. Some of the benefits of land ceiling is that by implementing the Land Ceiling Act, we were able to abolish the zamindari system. By providing for a land ceiling, we were able to implement the tenancy reforms. By implementing land ceiling, we were able to promote equity in terms of land ownership and promote a kind of egalitarian society. Apart from that, it is also said that the land ceiling policy led to a breaking down of the large land into small land. So it is expected that once a large amount of land is broken down into small land, the overall productivity of the land would increase. So these are some of the points that you could have written in your answer. So as you can see in this particular mind map, all the components of land reforms we had covered in our mains revision classes. So, the content from this particular mains revision classes alone was sufficient to write answer to this particular question asked in mains 2023. Let's go to the second question. The question is, what are the direct and indirect subsidies provided to farm sector in India? Discuss the issues raised by WTO in relation to agricultural subsidies. It is being said that the government of India spends almost around 2% of our GDP on providing different types of agricultural subsidies. These agriculture subsidies alone account for 21% of the farm income in India. So, if you look at the kind of subsidies which the government is providing for, these subsidies can be broadly categorized into direct farm subsidies and indirect farm subsidies. Direct farm subsidies are those kind of subsidies wherein the government is providing for direct financial assistance to the farmers. So the direct subsidies would include the government scheme such as PM Kisan, which provides for a cash transfer of rupees 6,000. It also includes the support given by the farmer by the government in the form of farm loan waivers. So these constitute the direct subsidies. Indirect subsidies are basically those subsidies wherein the government is providing for agricultural inputs at a price which is much below the market price. What are these indirect subsidies? As you can see, we are providing for fertilizer subsidy both on urea as well as P and K fertilizers in the form of nutrient based subsidy scheme. We are providing for electricity subsidy, water subsidy, interest rate subvention, subsidy on seeds, as well as MSP. So, by going through this particular aspect about the different types of subsidies, one could have easily answered the first part of the question about what are the direct and indirect farm subsidies. The second part of the question was with respect to issues raised by WTO with respect to agricultural subsidies. I hope all of you must be knowing about the WTO agreement on agriculture. As you know, the agreement on agriculture puts a limit on the subsidies that the government can give to the farmers. That limit for the developing countries is 10% of the agricultural value production in the year 1986-88. So no developing country is allowed to give subsidies over and above 10% limit which is put under agreement on agriculture. But as you know, the Indian government is presently implementing National Food Security Act. In order to implement National Food Security Act, the government is required to give subsidies over and above this limit of 10%. So India's implementation of National Food Security Act is in direct conflict with agreement on agriculture. And this is one of the biggest issue which is raised by WTO. And we all know that this particular issue is right now resolved through what is called as peace clause. But this peace clause is only a temporary solution, and India has been demanding for a permanent solution to this particular problem. Apart from this, there is another issue which WTO has raised. It is with respect to the export subsidies which the Indian government had provided on the sugar. So, what was the issue? Around 2 to 3 years back, there was surplus increase in the production of sugar. Because of surplus increase in production of sugar, there was large scale drop in the prices of sugar. So when there was a fall in the sugar prices, the overall profits of the sugarcane industries reduced. As the profit margin of sugarcane industries reduced, the ability of the sugarcane industries to pay for fair and remunerative prices to the sugarcane farmers reduced. So we had a problem. The problem was there was a surplus sugar production, which in turn reduced the ability of the sugarcane industries to pay for the cane arrears to the sugarcane farmers. So the government came up with the idea. The idea was to boost export of sugar by providing for transport subsidy. That is, the government provided for transport subsidy to the sugarcane industries so that the sugar can be exported to other countries. But one of the pillar of agreement on agriculture prohibits the countries from providing for export subsidies. So that is why WTO had raised issue with respect to export subsidies provided by the Indian government on the export of sugar. So this was another important aspect of the second dimension of the question. So all these aspects, including the concept of farm and the direct and indirect farm subsidies, was discussed in the mains revision classes. So this is the question number 2. Now coming to the third question. Third question, it says faster economic growth requires increased share of manufacturing sector in GDP, particularly of micro, small and medium enterprises. Comment on the present policies of the government in this regard. So here the question is about the manufacturing sector. So we all know that the present GDP size of India is around $3 trillion, and India is aspiring to become a $5 trillion economy. It is being said that in order to become a $5 trillion economy, India has to give a push to the manufacturing sector. But the problem in this particular case is, if you look at the share of manufacturing sector to India's GDP, it has been stagnant at almost around 16 to 17%. Similarly, the share of manufacturing sector to job creation is also stagnant at 12%. So when we are saying stagnation, stagnation since when? Stagnation since 1991 reforms. So accordingly, the government has come up with a number of policies to increase the share of manufacturing sector. For example, there is one important policy of the government called as National Manufacturing Policy. The government seeks to increase the share of manufacturing sector from 16 to 17% to at least around 25% of India's GDP. So, in pursuance with such a policy, the government has taken a number of initiatives. Initiatives such as Production Linked Incentive Scheme, that is PLI scheme. We have come up with the concept of SEZ policy, Special Economic Zone. India has been focusing on Make in India and Assemble in India. As part of Assemble in India, India is trying to integrate itself into global value chains. Then India has also been signing FTAs with the countries across the world to give a fillip to the manufacturing sector so that the goods could be exported to other countries. Further, the government is also focusing on the development of MSME sector. For example, you must be knowing that for the sake for the MSME sector, recently the government has come up with a changed definition of MSME sector. So all these are the policy initiatives of the government. But here the question was comment on the policies taken by the government to give a boost to the manufacturing sector. So when the question says comment, what are you required to do? Out of these policies, you could have picked up say around 3 to 4 major policies, and on these 3 to 4 major policies you could have highlighted that these are the benefits and these are the challenges with respect to government policies. For example, one challenge which you could have mentioned is that government is giving incentives to micro, small and medium enterprises such as cheaper credit, exemption from labor laws. But because of these incentives given by the government, the MSMEs have continued to remain small rather than grow bigger. So it has led to what is called as the problem of draft firms. So we need to implement the recommendations of the UK Sina Committee on MSME. Similarly, you could have also mentioned some points about SEZ. In particular, you could have mentioned about the Baba Kalyani Committee on Special Economic Zone Policy. You could have mentioned some points about PLI scheme, Production Linked Incentive Scheme. So, as you can see in our mains revision classes, individually we had covered all of these topics in much greater detail. But let me tell you what was the challenge in this particular question. The challenge here was the students who would be writing mains, who were writing mains this time, they had adequate content to write answer to this particular question. But the challenge here was that this question was asked for 10 marks. So you're required to write answer in just 150 words. That was the biggest challenge where you have huge content, but how do you concise that content into limited words? This was a challenge as far as this question was concerned. Let's take up the next question. What is the status of digitization in the Indian economy? Examine the problems faced in this regard and suggest improvements. I would consider this particular question as a very straightforward question in this year mains examination. In your UPSC syllabus, there is one line that is infrastructure. So, infrastructure could also be interpreted as digital infrastructure. So, basically, here you are required to highlight what is the present status of digital economy in India, what are the challenges that we are facing, what initiatives the government has taken to address those challenges, and what more needs to be done. Now, all of these aspects related to the digitization of the Indian economy, this was covered in our mains compass. On page number 189, there is a topic that is digital infrastructure prospects and challenges. So, in this particular page, we have covered what is the current situation, which is able to address the first part of the question, that is the status of digitization. Second aspect, we have covered what steps should we take for improving digital infrastructure. This aspect would have taken care of the third part of the question, that is suggest certain improvements. And we have also covered constraints and challenges. This aspect would have taken care of the second dimension of the question about the problems in the digital infrastructure. So all of these aspects was covered in our mains compass, page number 189. Coming to the next question, the question was, explain the changes in cropping pattern in India in the context of changes in the consumption pattern and marketing conditions. So when you look at this particular question, you have to first understand what is cropping pattern in India. That is what percentage of agricultural land is under different crops. Then you need to highlight as to how the cropping pattern in India has got changed because of change in consumption pattern as well as because of marketing conditions. So there are two dimensions of the question. Cropping pattern changes because of consumption pattern and cropping pattern changes because of market conditions. So here, with respect to changes in cropping pattern, India right now is focusing on rainbow revolution. Rainbow revolution means we are focusing on all round development of agriculture sector. Why is that? This is because it being said, the promotion of diversification of Indian agriculture, that is changes in the cropping pattern, will help us ensure nutritional security. In particular, in case of India, it has so happened that as the income levels of the people have increased, there is shift in the consumption pattern of the people towards more protein based foods. So there is shift in the consumption pattern of the people towards protein-based foods such as egg, fish, meat, milk, pulses, and so on. So because of this shift in the consumption pattern, we are focusing on promotion of millet revolution. We already know that the year 2023 has been declared as International Year of Millets. So this is to promote the agricultural diversification to cater to needs of consumption pattern. Apart from that, India is also focusing on promotion of livestock sector, which in turn is leading to changes in cropping pattern. So now there is a higher demand for feed and fodder for the animals, which is leading to changes in the cropping pattern. Apart from that, India's consumption of edible oils has drastically increased. So much so that even today, we are not being able to ensure Atmanirbhar Bharat in edible oil. It is being said 60% of edible oil that we use in India is actually imported from other countries. Further, 99% of palm oil is imported from other countries. So we are trying to promote the cultivation of oil seeds. Best example is 2 years back, the government of India has launched an initiative called as National Edible Oil Mission Oil Palm. As the name suggests, we are focusing on cultivation of palm oil. Once again, we are changing our cropping pattern in line with the consumption pattern. Similarly, because of increase in income levels of the farmers, now we are giving a renewed thrust to cultivation of fruits and vegetables. This is referred to as golden revolution. Golden revolution is increase in cultivation of fruits and vegetables. So right now, India is considered to be the second largest producer of fruits and vegetables at the global level. Apart from that, it is also being said consistently in last 5 to 6 years, the overall production of fruits and vegetables has actually surpassed the production of food grains. This is another important change which is taking place. So all of these points you could have very well incorporated while writing as to how changes in consumption pattern has led to changes in the cropping pattern. That is the first part. The second part also as to how cropping pattern is determined by market conditions. So as you can see, some of the marketing related factors which determine the cropping pattern obviously includes your MSP regime. So government is declaring MSP for 22 major agriculture commodities, but the procurement is strong only for rice and wheat. Because of that, right now, rice and wheat alone account for 38% of our area under agriculture. Further, higher post harvest losses is, in a way, prohibiting the farmers to grow certain crops which are more perishable. Same way, price volatility in terms of pulses, which is also referred to as cobweb phenomena, is also restricting the farmers from growing more pulses. The same can be said about frequent ban on exports, which is in a way disincentivizing the farmers to grow certain specific crops. So all of this are market rated conditions which you could have incorporated in your answer. So this is how, based upon the understanding that you get in the mains revision classes, you could have written an answer related to this particular question on cropping pattern in India. Let's take up our next question. How does e-technology help farmers in production and marketing of agriculture produce? Explain it. I would say this to be a very straightforward as a and a easy question. In your syllabus, there is a line, role of e-technology in the aid of farmers. From there, directly this question has been asked. So in our mains revision class PPT, I had incorporated this particular question about discuss various challenges in the adoption of technology for the benefit of farmers. But in our mains revision classes, we discuss a particular topic by adopting a 360-degree approach. So accordingly, In this particular topic of digital technologies in agriculture, in our PPT, we had incorporated everything related to digital technologies in agriculture, that is, benefits, the initiatives, as well as challenges. So that if any question is asked with respect to digital technologies in agriculture, students would find it easier to write an answer to that particular question. So this year means a direct question about benefits of digital technologies in agriculture. Directly, you could have incorporated all these points. And as you can see, in order to enrich your answer, we had also incorporated certain specific case studies, certain specific examples. This is how you add value to your answer. Coming to the next question. The question is, distinguish between care economy and monetized economy. How can care economy be brought into monetized economy through women empowerment? So when you look at this question, I would consider this particular question to be out of box question. I would consider this question to be moderately difficult. Here, if you look at the first part of the question, here you are required to distinguish between care economy and monetized economy. What is care economy? Care economy is basically that segment of our economy wherein you have certain stakeholders who are involved in taking care of others. Taking care of others means who? They are taking care of children, they are taking care of senior citizens, and they are looking after the household work. This sector is mostly informal sector. When we say care economy basically includes the unpaid household work. Apart from that, it also include the low paid work which is actually done by the domestic workers. So please do understand that care economy includes both part, unpaid work as well as the paid work. But the paid work is informal and hence it is unpaid. So here you need to distinguish between care economy and monetized economy. And look at the second part. Second part says how can the care economy be brought into monetized economy? When we say monetized economy, it means people are offering their services. When they offer their services, people are paid wages which are market determined. So, what is a major difference between care economy and monetized economy? It is with respect to wages. So, in care economy, you are not paid at all, or even if you are paid, you are paid less wages. Monetized economy, you are paid as per the market conditions based upon the market demand and supply. So, here, when you look at the care economy, it is being said that most of the stakeholders who are part of the care economy in India are actually women. For example, in India, we carry out a survey called as time use survey, which basically highlights what amount of time is spent by men and women in different set of activities. Unsurprisingly, it is being said that women spend 8 times more amount of time than the men in the household work. It means if men are spending 1 hour on household work, women are spending 8 hours on household work. When women are spending more amount of time on household work, obviously their ability to participate in the formal economy or their ability to participate in the monetized economy will reduce. That is why when you see the female labor force participation rate in India, it is around 27%. Whereas the male labor force participation rate is much higher at 75%. According to international organizations, it is being said if female labor force participation rate increases to match up to male labor force participation rate, India's GDP size could well increase by 20%. This is the significance of bringing the care economy into monetized economy. So, here, what should we do? in order to bring the care economy into monetized economy. Here, some of the things that we have to do is government would have to spend more amount of money in care infrastructure so that the need for the women to work in the care infrastructure or care economy reduces. We have to enhance the female labor force participation rate. We have to ensure the rights of the domestic workers and promote silver economy. Silver economy is a form of economy where we are catering to the needs of senior citizens. We are taking care of senior citizens. So when we promote silver economy, it has two benefits. One, we will be able to take care of senior citizens, plus we will be able to monetize the care economy. So it's a win-win situation for India. So as far as this particular topic is concerned, in our mains revision classes, we are discussing in detail about the female labor force participation rate. We are also discussed as to why the female labor force participation rate is reducing. So these things we had covered in the mains PPTs. So it is being said that if you had understood this particular topic, you could have written a good answer to this particular question. So far in this particular discussion, we have briefly touched upon the demand of the question and how you could have answered each of those questions. We would soon be coming out with a detailed discussion of these questions one by one. So keep watching the videos to know the answers, the detailed answers to each of these 8 questions. Thank you so much.